Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Yacht Crew Vlogs right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Rhea. I am your host, and today I am joined by Nigel Sherlock. How are you, Nigel?
I'm very good, thank you. Very good indeed.
Good. You are an independent sales representative for several supply companies in the yachting industry.
Yep, correct. Yep. Do you
What
want to
does
know
that
who?
mean?
All that means is there are a number of companies who've chosen to, instead of having their own direct sales force and all the costs and headaches that come with that, they've chosen me to represent them in the industry. So I have a quite a slightly different remuneration package, but I'm effectively the sales guy in the chosen markets for five companies at the moment. So
And can you tell us what it is that you represent specifically? Not maybe not company names, but the
Yeah,
products.
I do underwater lighting, exterior and interior lighting, night vision cameras, satellite airtime contracts, and media content, movies and music, and that kind of stuff content. They're my primary focus. There's a couple of other companies I also support and help, but they're my primary ones.
Well, how long have you dealt with the yachting industry?
Been in the industry now about 11 years directly. Prior to that, I had some indirect involvement, but I've been full time, if you like, for the last about 11 years, and doing what I do now on my own for about five and a half years now. Prior to that, I worked for some big AVIT companies.
So when the whole point of this conversation actually is about NYS 2020 going ahead, you have had some very strong opinions on social media, and I've already done an interview with another very opinionated gentleman by the name of Oscar Sitches. I came across you and I thought, you know what, here's somebody else that I'd be interested in interviewing and get their thoughts on it as well. What do you think about NYS 2020 going forward this year?
I think firstly, the thought of walking around that show, even with a third of its capacity, just is completely unappealing for me. Um, and so I made a decision some weeks ago that I wasn't going to go, even if the show went ahead. I mean, I cancelled my flights and my accommodation more or less straight away. And then I also sort of began to realize, well, actually, in my opinion, if the show did go ahead, I just think it would be bad taste. I think it would be the wrong message that the industry would be sending out. Screw you, rest of the world. We're the super yacht industry. We'll carry on having our swanky do in Monaco. Thanks very much. So that was sort of my main drive, and I guess like everybody else, I spent a lot of time, a lot of energy and thought thinking about, well, is it going to go ahead? Am I going to miss out this whole fear of missing out FOMO thing that was recently explained to me, and that was also for me was a big distraction in my business. I mean, I've been hit like everybody else with the Corona situation, and the moment I kind of made the decision I'm not going, I got a kind of, I was able to put it behind me, and this sort of pressure lifted, and I thought, okay, now let's focus back on the business. And then I got dragged into various social media discussions online because I saw it on my feeds on LinkedIn, Instagram, and what have you. And I've made a few comments and got quite a lot of backlash, and also a lot of, actually, I think the majority of people are saying no, it shouldn't go ahead. And that actually, in my opinion, is the same for all the shows. I think we should just write this year off. Obviously we are going to turn a corner. Things will get better, but we're nowhere near through it. And if you still look at all the figures around the world for the coronavirus, we're nowhere near through it. So to think of going so soon to another show, to me, ridiculous. It just shouldn't. And is the industry going to suffer? No, not at all. And I think actually it's a good wake-up call to, I think whilst we've all spent so much time at home in the last 12 weeks, I think we've all begun to see the world slightly differently, how we've worked before. I mean, I typically, and I don't actually think my working practices are going to change that much, because I do 99% of my business face to face, so I'm on the road all the time. But I think in terms of shows and how we also go about our normal business, I think, there's going to be a lot more home working and a lot more Skyping and Zooming and everything else. But in terms of NYS, no, I just think there's just a thought, it's just ridiculous that it's going to go ahead. And these people who keep, is it, isn't it? Get over it. It's not going to go ahead. That was my opinion.
Well, I mean, to be absolutely honest, you really do like NYS. I mean, we were talking, off air in regards to the yacht shows that you really like to attend and you find give you the best sort of return for investment. And Mets and NYS were the two ones that you say you really like to go every year and you think they're important shows for you. So it's not a matter of having anything against NYS. It's just your opinion that this year they should all be canceled.
Yeah, and in terms of return on investment, it's always the big question, right? I mean, I don't have a stand personally, but some of the brands I represent do, and it's a massive logistical operation, and it's a huge expense, and it's always the question: was it worth it? But Monaco, I think, is one of the shows where there is this feeling, this fear of missing out, and there is this kind of fear if you don't go, oh, everyone will think you've gone out of business, and are you still there? And it's driven by fear, I think. And I've always thought that. I've spoken to companies who've been sat on the fence for years and still go year on year. They still go back because they're afraid if they don't, it sends the wrong message. And I just think that's the wrong motivator to go and spend tens of thousands on attending a sort of 3-4 day show somewhere. For me, Monaco is absolutely. Why is it the most important show for me? Is because everyone's there, and it's the show where I catch up with all my primary contacts, and you've got them all in that little space of 4 or 5 days. So yeah, it's a super important show. Whether or not I would take a stand if I had to show a product or a service with a stand. Personally, not. I do business in a different way. I'm much more networking, developing my network, meeting new contacts, and gathering intel. That's how I work. So Monaco, yeah, it's a primary show. So it's not about the show. I do think the show's got so big. I mean, I'm still very much a newbie to the industry. I've been in the industry 10, 11 years, so I'm still very much a sort of new kid on the block. But when the show started having helicopters and motorbikes and luxury cars, I thought, this isn't the show. So I think hopefully it sends a message to the organisers, and I think there should be some dialogue with the industry. What is it you want? Because I think it became a little bit too blurred and not what we want as an industry, I don't believe.
Well, do you think this is what prompted Martin from over at Super Yacht Forum to bring up the idea that maybe there should be 2 Monaco yacht shows, one for 45 meter under in April and another for 45 meter and up in September?
Yeah, I read that. I read the article from Martin. I mean, there is certainly it's not so much a clean break, but there is a difference, obviously, in the smaller yacht sector to the large yacht sector, and there is a difference in the supply chain. Personally, I concentrate on the Netherlands and Germany, and they typically tend to be 50, 60 meter upwards. I mean, I think the average size of yacht I'm involved with now, new build, is probably 80, 85 meters, up to 140 plus. There's one in there, I think it's 55, and you think, oh, 55, well, that's a small one, but you think, crikey, 10 years ago that was huge. But I do think there definitely is. There's this kind of break in the industry of size. Whether or not you could have 2 shows, because a lot of the companies I represent supply to both sectors. I personally don't, but they do. So would that mean two shows that you've got to attend? I can't see it. I really can't see it. And I think the message has been clear for years. The industry wants less shows. We've been complaining for years there are too many shows. And Martin himself has been saying that. I've been to many of Martin's conferences, and I believe he's been one of the forefront people who've said, oh, there are too many shows, or what is the value of shows? So I don't think 2 shows in Monaco. No. Well, certainly I wouldn't go to the second show that was for the smaller sector, smaller size of the industry. So yeah, I don't know, 2 shows. I can't see it happening. I really can't.
Well, it's funny that you say a lot in the industry are saying that there are too many shows already, because every year it seems like there's another new boat show announced and is being pushed out there. Do you think we've reached that saturation market, and that some of these boat shows will eventually fail, and maybe this year is the catalyst for that?
Yeah, I mean, that it has indeed been shows that have come and gone, even in my short time in the industry. But I guess, I think one of the things that I liked about the industry when I got into it first, there's a lot of things about it that are very immature. And even in my short time, I have seen the industry change and become more professional, for want of a better word. And I think people are beginning to realize, like me, which shows are the good ones and which shows are the nice to go tos or the must go tos, and subject to budgets and time and everything else. You go to them all or you don't. And it is an industry very much driven on networking. And when I first got into the industry, I did go to every single show, and I spent my entire life on the road. But as a result, I built up a pretty good network, and then I've honed that down, and I focus on 2 or 3 shows a year, and that suits me. And I think depending on where you sit in the industry, I think that's probably the best way to go. But yeah, I mean, there was the London Yacht Show, whatever it was called, a few years ago. I think it happened twice, I think, and then disappeared. But again, it's this FOMO, fear of missing out. I think everybody went to the first version of that show because it's something new. I think we had to be there, and the second year, everyone's gone. So new shows, no, less is better, I think. I think that there are probably 4 or 5 shows a year that everyone should go to.
Well, one interesting thing that you did raise in regards to Monaco Yacht Show was that it is worldwide and it's about networking for you. Now, if the flights aren't open, if the ports aren't fully open, if we're still having these issues with quarantines when people return to their countries or on their way, it's not actually going to be a worldwide show, is it? No.
I mean, I speak to not only the companies I represent, but I'm speaking to supply companies every day. And every day, more and more companies are telling me, or I'm hearing of more and more companies that have cancelled and that will not be going regardless of what happens if everything's lifted and suddenly quarantine finishes and it's all clear to go. Companies have said, no, we're not going to go this year. It's now, that I think also with Monaco, there came a point by which companies had to commit, not only to commit to the show organisers, but to commit to the logistics and the operations to get there. And many big companies I know have said, let's just call it, and in fact, a lot of them have been saying to me, and one of the companies I do represent have been there every year. They've said, whether or not it goes ahead, we've decided, what, this year, let's take a year out. And in fact, they've even said, we're not going to go next year either. So, wow. Yeah. And again, because they've also felt that they've been motivated to go for this fear of not being there, not being visible. And people thought, have they gone bankrupt over there? And it's again, to me, it's a wrong motivation to attend something because you're scared not to. So yeah, I know several companies who won't go next year either because they really want to see. I mean, fact is, I don't believe the show will go ahead this year at all, and I think it will make a lot of people realise, if there's not a big dip in your business, then why spend 20,000-30,000 upwards to have a stand there when it doesn't really affect your business. But I guess it depends on your standing in the industry, how well established you are. There's so many factors, and obviously not one rule applies to everybody else. But yeah, I think next year will be very interesting because clearly, all being well, it will go ahead next year. But I'm really curious as to how it will look and feel next year because I think it has to change, and I think there will be many companies who won't go next year either and have stands, but there may be some newcomers. So yeah, I think it's been a good shake-up.
Well, they're saying that they're going to do this in a not-for-profit concept. Now, when you start trying to dig into that a little bit and find out more details about it, there's nothing out there. There's absolutely nothing to find out how they're planning on changing the format of the show to make it the new format that they're talking about.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine at this point in time, it's probably a bit too early. I think clearly, and I've been saying, everybody, we should just accept that it won't go ahead. Let's just focus our attention on our own businesses. Let's get our own business back on track and prepared for when everything gets back to some sort of normality. So I guess it's the same thing for the organisers. They have a business to run, and of course this will be a huge, it'll have a huge impact on their business if it doesn't go ahead. So I guess the same advice to them. They've got to get their focus back on getting their business back on its knees again. But their business is events. But I think at this point in time, it's everything I've read online and on social media about the event is that they are still trying to scrape together something of a show. But yeah, it's I just at this point in time, I don't think they're in a position to say what that new format would be. I think it's going to take a long time to get that to readjust that.
Well, the other show that's coming up after that is still on the schedule so far is Mets. Do you think that's going to happen?
I'd like to say no, simply because, again, Mets is my other. I'm a huge fan of Mets. It's a crazy few days, and we get a lot of business done at Mets. It's very technical, and everything I do is technical. But again, right now, my mentality, and it must be for everybody, is the thought of walking around Mets, banging shoulders with thousands of people. you know, it's no, it doesn't appeal. But I guess I don't think Mets will go ahead. I think it's still going to be too soon. You know, there's all these fears of, you know, come the fall, there's going to be a spike in infections, and there may be a more severe lockdown. I think it's too far ahead right now to accurately forecast. I live nearby the Rhea Exhibition Centre anyway, so whether it goes ahead or not, it's no major shakes for me with flights and accommodation. And of course, if it does go ahead, I still think if you look down, you know, in November, you know, will we have switched our mentality back to pre-COVID-19? I don't think so. I think it's going to take quite a long time for us to get away from this fear of washing our hands and wearing face masks and social distancing. So, yeah, I don't think it will. And if it did go ahead, I think it'd be in a reduced capacity, and it wouldn't be the show that it was. So therefore, if it's not the show that it was, why go? So I think there's a lot of things. Yeah, if I was a gambling man, which I'm not, I would say it won't go ahead.
Well, I mean, I think this new normal is straight across the face of the planet, whether you're in yachting, whether it's yacht shows, whatever. We are all going to be a little bit afraid of the interaction that we were so used to before.
Yeah, no, for sure. I know. I mean, for example, like everybody else, I've been at home for the last 12 weeks. You know, my primary market is the Netherlands and Germany, the shipyards, and they are now slowly opening themselves to having external parties come into the yard, obviously under strict social distancing rules with gloves and masks and everything else. And I'm going to be back on the road again next week, tentatively. So, yeah, I'm quite curious how that's going to work, and how people are going to greet me and how the interaction is going to be. So yeah, well, but it amazed me as soon as the lockdown came how quickly we did all adjust. You know, playing bumper cars around the supermarket, and you know how quickly you do adjust to these new rules of social distancing. Yeah. It's quite funny how human nature, how we adapted. And so, but at the same time, I don't think we're going to go back to the old way as quickly as we got into the new mindset, if you know what I mean. I think we adapted very quickly to the new social distancing, but I think it'll take a time to get it out of our systems and shake hands and hug and be a bit closer to each other. I think that's yeah. And again, so November, Flibs again. Would Flibs go ahead in end of October? I can't imagine. I just can't imagine. But Flibs is so huge, you know. Maybe it goes ahead in a different format with different, you know. Would all the big European shipyards have a stand there? I can't imagine. If they're going to miss Monaco, they're going to miss Flibs. So maybe Flibs becomes a more localized US market focused show this year. I mean, looking at all the stuff that's going on in the US at the moment, yeah, maybe they would say, to hell with it, we're going to have a show. Yeah. Well, in fact, the funny thing was actually in February this year of each year is the big ISE, which is a big. It's not focused yachting, but it's a big technology, IT technology electronics show, biggest in Europe. And that was just at the start of COVID-19. So it was mid-end of February. And thousands of people you know, didn't go in the end. Some people did go, but a lot of big exhibitors pulled. And it was a shadow of its former self. And that was pre-lockdown. That was like 3 or 4 weeks pre-lockdown. So I just can't, you know, I can't see Mets going ahead. Yeah, I don't believe it. But we'll see.
Well, you know what? It's going to be an interesting last half of the year. We've gotten through the first half of the year. Ironically, it's crazy to see how things change so quickly. There was news reports in January and February of how, you know, 2020 was going to be an absolutely stellar year for yachting. It was going to be one of the best years ever. And then, of course, this hit. Now we're 6 months in. We've got another 6 months to go. And it is difficult to say what's going to be happening September, October. It's difficult to say what's going to be happening 2 weeks from now. So, yeah. You know, I'd like to be able to welcome you back again at some stage and have another conversation as things change. And it's refreshing again to have another sort of straight talker on the airwaves. Yeah.
Well, so, you know, if you just one last thing, Rhea, if you look at, I mean, if you look at actually what's happening in the new build, and I am only focused on new build primarily, you know, all the projects are still going on. They've all slowed down because of shift working and social distancing on site, but the yacht's still being built. I'm not hearing of any cancelled yacht orders. There's been a couple of delayed ones, but to me, and if I speak to the design community and the owners reps and all the other industry people that I deal with, there's a lot out there. There's a lot of prospective projects out there. Of course, the big thing, I guess, is if we're going to be thrown into a world depression recession, and how will that affect us? You know, the last one was 10, 12 years ago, and that did have an effect on the industry. It did dip for sure. So that for me would be the big question is, you know, is the world economy going to go into a fairly long and sustained depression stroke recession? But no, the business, everyone's busy. Everyone I speak to is crazy busy.
Well, the interesting thing about it, though, is that it's not, you know, even if it does go into a recession, the fact that it was a pandemic and the fact that we have to do social distancing, and yachting is very unique in the way that you can actually social distance beyond anybody's wildest dreams through yachting. So, you know, I've had a lot of reports and spoken to a lot of people that have seen yacht charter inquiries increase. You know, we're seeing a lot of these silent yachts, these new catamarans that have the solar panels, etc. People are starting to buy those left, right, and center. So there is a lot of movement within the yachting industry, and it may continue so, even if this pandemic does, or maybe more so if the pandemic does have a second wave. Who knows? So, you know, the yacht shows will be affected for sure, but yacht sales and yacht charter, I don't know, maybe positively.
Yeah. Yeah, well, again, I'm hearing charter inquiries are up. You know, I have a family member who's a crew on a large, very popular charter boat, and they're hoping to have a season, or you know, recover from what's left of the season. Whereas if you spoke to them and charter brokers 4 weeks ago, it was completely dead. So yeah, I think obviously the industry is a resilient industry for obvious reasons. Yeah, I just think the biggest thing is going to be it's been a big culture shock for everybody, or a wake up call as to how we work, and it's interesting to see how many shipyards have changed the way they work, from home working and shift work, and a lot of people love it. You know, and a lot of people have. You know, I spoke to the head of a shipyard recently, and head of the electrical department on the shipyard, and he said I can do 5 days work in the office in 3 days at home. I don't have the interruptions. I don't have the conversations at the water cooler. I'm not pulled into meetings. I'm not asked for my opinion on this. I'm not dragged down to the shop floor to check on a weld or whatever. You know, and he's proposed. Well, he wants going forward. He wants to do 3 days at home, and 2 days in the office doing all the human stuff, where he is there to you know, to show a face and look at things, and he said, you know, actually I'm going to be giving them a lot more, and my productivity is going to be through the roof, because I'm going to do my normal 5 days work in 3 days and 2 days in the office. So it's funny, everyone's changed, and everyone's seen things in a different way, and it's I hope a lot of it stays. I hope a lot of this we continue with it. I hope we don't go back to the old way.
No, I think that pretty much straight across the board, people have become a little bit more open, a little bit more kinder, a little bit more real. I had this conversation just the other day with another person as well, that I think the old form of business was making sure that you had this big fancy building with a great big sign, and that meant that you had made it. And that's just not the way it is anymore. It's not necessary. You don't have to pay those huge bills to have that building, because you know, we have the capabilities of working anywhere on the face of the planet, from the beach if you want to, you know, running a huge corporation. It's possible, whereas 30 years ago it wasn't.
Yeah. No, I think it's all positive. I really do. I think you know, if I speak to a lot of the owners, build teams, and the shipyards, you know, this pause has been a welcome break. Yeah. You know, because the build process of the process of building a new boat, it's so fraught, and there's so much pressure with deadlines and the whole process. To have this sudden stop, time out, everyone's going to breathe a sigh of relief, and they're able to take stock of where they're at. What are we missing? When we go again, let's get prepared to go again. So yeah, I mean, projects have been delayed, but I think the end product, because of the delay, will actually be better than it would have been, because it's push. You know, the owner wants the delivery on this date. Let's get it done, ready or not. So a lot of the boats I'm dealing with have said, actually, it's been good to have this break, because we've all just taken a bit of a step back and gone, okay, is this the best way to do things? Where were we going wrong? Because it's constant catch up. So yeah, I don't know anybody really who is going to come out of this worse. You know, I think it's been a good break for everybody, just to have a bit of a stop and a rethink and take stock of where we're at. So yeah. And next week I'm
just a quick wrap up. You figure that there should be no boat shows in 2020.
Nope.
And there should be less boat shows overall, but there are your favorite boat shows that you would like to see coming back bigger, better, and stronger in 2021, and you'll definitely be there to support them when they do.
Hell yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Wonderful. Well, once again, thank you ever so much for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Rhea. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Everyone, this has been Nigel Sherlock coming from, where are you? I didn't even ask where you are.
I'm in Haarlem in the Netherlands.
Okay, from the Netherlands, live right here on Yachting International Radio. You have been listening to another edition of Yacht Crew Vlogs. My name is Rhea. I have been your host. Tune in again for another episode.